Good evening. On behalf of the Danforth Leadership Council, welcome Seeds of Change 2024. I am Benjamin Ola-Akande, volunteer at Danforth Center, where I serve as the chair of the Danforth Leadership Council. And by day, I'm the Senior Vice President, Chief Corporate Responsibility Officer at Stifel Financial. Thank you for joining us tonight for an important discussion on success, leadership, and most importantly, falling in love. You would understand more just in a few minutes. But first, we are grateful to our media sponsor, HEC Media, who is live streaming tonight's presentation, but you will also be able to watch the broadcast on HEC TV next month with the option to like and to share online. Since 2010, Seeds of Change has welcomed renowned thought leaders and innovators to the Danforth Center to inspire and to unite the audience for positive change. Our past programs have energized us with inspirational stories, daring us to dream with eyes wide open, and moved us to tackle big problems at home and abroad. You see, here at the Danforth Plant Life Center, we believe that plants are the key to sustainable solutions. We are intently focused on providing and improving the human condition. And so tonight, we continue the tradition by featuring well-known name in St. Louis community. It is my pleasure to introduce our featured Seed of Change guest, Penny Pennington. Penny is the managing partner of one of the nation's top financial service company, Edward Jones, named as one of the world's most admired companies by Fortune magazine in 2024. Originally from Nashville, and with a 14-year career in banking before joining Edward Jones, Penny is the first woman and the sixth person to lead this storied 102-year-old St. Louis organization. And as the managing partner at Edward Jones, Penny has led the firm with a strong vision, focusing on helping individuals achieve their financial goals. Beyond her professional accomplishments, of course, Penny is a well-known philanthropist who has consistently given her time, talent, and treasure to so many organizations here in St. Louis. She is currently chair of the Danforth Center Board of Directors, and Penny is also active in many other St. Louis-based organizations such as Pedal the Cause, Girl Scout, Junior Achievement, just to mention a few. Penny is a living example of what community engagement looks like. And one of the things that Penny and I have in common is that we have both participated in Dancing with St. Louis Stars.
To do it again, Benjamin.
Indeed, it was in support of the Independent Center. And if you're looking for evidence, you will find it on social media, on cyberspace. And that what we all know is that Penny is one heck of a dancer. But I must not digress, because tonight, we'll begin our SEED program with an extended conversation between Penny and Danforth Center President and CEO Jim Carrington. And then Penny will introduce and moderate a very special panel. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Penny Pennington and Jim Carrington.
Thanks, Benjamin.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. And thank you all for coming. It's great to see such a good turnout. And Penny, thank you for being our featured speaker at 2024 Seeds of Change at the Danforth Center.
Thank you.
I am excited about this evening. Now, let's get right into it. You've been thinking a lot about an idea that says the seed of innovation is falling in love with a problem.
Yeah.
What does it mean to fall in love with a problem?
So as we get started tonight, I want to say right up front that I hope that our panel and this discussion will leave you inspired and provoked about a problem that you are interested in solving. So we want to make this as practical as possible. So if you will just put in your mind's eye something that you feel deeply needs to be improved in the world. And the thesis that Jim just put out there is a little bit of mental jujitsu. And what I mean by that is, you know, we often talk about problems as, oh, I hate the problem, and this problem is a real problem. We need to fall in love with the problem. Fall in love with the problem. Make sure it's a problem worthy of loving. Benjamin, I love the way you started it. This is about falling in love. So we fall in love with things that are worthy of and then the seed of change for that solutioning that problem, the seed of change comes from a deep understanding about what that problem means in the world, a deep care about what could happen if it is solved. And innovatively, the fact that a problem that deep, that hard, that worthy of solving is probably a thornier problem than civilization has faced in the past, which requires a different pattern of solving that problem. It requires a different seed to be planted. It requires a different set of innovators to come together and to think in interdisciplinary ways, a word that I've really deeply learned about because of my affiliation with Danforth. It requires that in order to solve these thorny problems. So innovation in the way to think about a problem, falling in love with a problem, innovation in terms of how we partner together in ways that break patterns for how we've partnered together to solve problems before. That's the thesis that I've been thinking a lot about.
So let me throw something back that is a cliche. Mm-hmm. Every graduation speech has the following line in it. Make sure you do something you love. Mm-hmm. How is this falling in love with a problem different than do something you love?
Yeah. Well, I believe that this act of falling in love with a problem is a deeply personal act. That it is something that by engaging in that problem, in thinking so deeply and understanding the people that these problems affect, that you end up identifying with that problem. Like life expands to surround the goal, and it becomes deeply embedded in who we are. So it ends up being something that you do love to be involved in because you love that problem, you understand the depth of it, you care about the people that solving that problem would impact.
So I guess the obvious question to lead you towards is, what is the problem that you've fallen in love with?
In my experience, talent and ambition, and by ambition, I mean the ambition to lead a thriving and possibility-centered life. Talent and ambition like that is more common than is the opportunity to actually live that possibility-centered life. To put it in a little more pithy way, talent is spread more widely than actual opportunity. I want to close that gap. And I want to close that gap for millions of people. This is why I am in financial services. It is why I am with Edward Jones, the company I'm with. It's the reason that I choose to partner in the way that I do with the organizations that I align myself to. This is my business. Closing this gap is my business. It's the business that I lead, but I also make it my business. It's deeply personal to me. I make it my business to help close that gap.
And so you're closing this gap. I mean, the most obvious to me is with your clients.
Mm-hmm.
But, and we'll get to your teammates in just a little bit. But when, first of all, how did you make your way to Edward Jones? And when did you realize that that's the problem to solve? As opposed to, I want to be a great financial advisor, perhaps in your early years. I want to be a great executive. When did you realize that much more nuanced and much more complex problem to solve?
I've had a lifetime. I just had a birthday. I've had a lifetime of experiences like you all have, of seeing how my own perspective and experience ends up being really different than other people's perspectives and experiences. And I won't go deeply into what I call now my origin story, but I remember the first moment in my life when I literally, when I realized that literally I had more in my hands than I could hold. I was a very small child, and my hands were literally full, so full that I couldn't catch the hand of the person that I loved the most. And I've realized that over my lifetime, I've become the most agitated and disturbed when I realize that's been my experience, and others have so little in their hands, literally and metaphorically. So I want to say something that I am also very deeply invested in. I am a capitalist through and through. I'm a business person, and I believe deeply in the tools of business to solve really important problems. So I fell in love with this problem of this mismatch between talent and ambition and the opportunity that people have to achieve it. And I've gotten most disturbed in my life when I've seen that waste. That's waste. That is pure waste. And I know, living in the society that we live in, being the business person that I am, is that if you reduce waste and you create something that people want, there is human thriving like no other. And so the problem that I fell in love with now matches the profession I'm in, the time that I spend with Edward Jones, the way that I want to lead, the ways that I want to learn about helping in our community. And so it has become a very congruent life, a very harmonious life at the same time that I feel intense agitation pretty regularly, because there's so much opportunity. There is so much of that gap to close. We have so many tools available to us. If we seed and germinate that change in different ways that break patterns than we've broken before.
So you became a business person, and you had either an epiphany or a slow realization about falling in love with this problem. What came first?
We're going to talk in a minute about epiphany. It's you use the term slow roll. By working hard with the people that I get to work with, by deeply thinking about this gap and how important it is to close, by being inspired by the kind of people that we're going to talk to tonight, I've realized this sort of happiness, joy, that's a better term for it, this kind of joy about putting the skills that I'm a person of faith that God put in me in order to use those skills to their fullest potential and to create a place where more people are able to do that as well. So I gotta say, you know, part of me says, I bet God says, God, why did it take you so long to sort of, to really lean into this? But hey, I'm here now, so I'll, hopefully I'll stay healthy, and hopefully I've got a few more years to keep learning about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's not bad if God's telling you that.
Yeah.
I don't know what God's saying about me. So there wasn't a eureka moment, this is it. It's really the progression of your experience. Yeah. And really, if I could kind of turn this into the way I'm perceiving this, it's how am I going to have the most value to other people?
Yes. Right.
So let's talk about some groups of people. Well, let's just talk first. How do you inspire other people that you lead or other people that you're interacting with to find their passion?
Yeah. The way that we have done it at our company most recently, and this happened in no small part because of the pandemic, because of the crisis of opportunity, because of the concerns that our clients and our colleagues, 54,000 colleagues, had about what's happening in the world. The way that we have done it at Edward Jones is to talk a lot about purpose. We have a corporate purpose. It's a statement of what we do. We exist, we partner for positive impact to improve the lives of our clients and our colleagues, and together better our communities and society. But what's really important to get people really rolling on innovation and breaking patterns and doing things differently than we've ever done before, what really gets people rolling is their own passion, their own purpose. And so we talk a lot about that. What's yours? And by being a part of Edward Jones, are you able to meet your own purpose and passion?
Do you see, I could say, okay, we're Edward Jones, this is where we're heading, let's find people with that passion. But you have 54,000 teammates?
Yeah.
Or there's going to be a lot of people who don't share that passion, they have some other passion. Yeah. How do you lead a diverse organization where individuals have different passions?
Yeah. There's a unifying thread, at least for us. There's a unifying thread that we want to leave people in places better than we found them. That we want to partner with people to make them heroes in their own lives, and that we want to improve communities. We're everywhere across North America, so we want to make a difference in the communities we serve, and basically that's our license to operate. We want to be welcomed into people's communities and into their lives and helping them achieve their financial goals. But Jim, what I've found to be most effective is really about how we lead together, how we work together, and how we lead together. And so I wanted to share really sort of 3 hallmarks of that, and 3 hallmarks that I like to think when I'm done with leadership roles, people will see that I was leading according to these. The first one is to be human-centered. Now, that has become a much fuller term than it was when we weren't worried about whether machines were going to become human beings and usurp us. Frankly, I believe that human-centeredness makes the distinction between what a human can do and what a machine can do that much more relevant. Only humans can love. A machine cannot love. And a machine doesn't have an epiphany. A machine does not have a eureka moment. A machine doesn't actually care whether it solves that big problem. I'm not saying it can't help solve a problem, but it doesn't care that it does. That's what's so beautiful. That's what falling in love is all about, is being a real human being. So we talk a lot about human-centeredness at Edward Jones. The second hallmark, I'm going to call it bold integrity. And what I mean by that, I heard a number of years ago that integrity actually is not only about telling the truth. Integrity is about how big the problem is that you want to solve. If you are a very high integrity person, you are putting your will and your passion and your skills and your innovation to solving big problems. You're playing big ball. That's high integrity. So bold integrity and internal integrity is when your own passion, your own why is connected to that integrity and connected to that boldness. And so this is where we talk to our colleagues so much about what is your experience with leadership? What's your experience in solving hard problems? How do you want to engage in bold and purposeful ways? And then the third hallmark, some people call this collective impact. We call it together we serve. I close every address to my colleagues with a statement, together we serve. Now let's go make a difference. So collective impact, or together we serve, is a theory of impact that is based on this interdisciplinary, this integration of all kinds of ways to solve a problem. I'll give you one small example. The flip side of wealth and well-being financially is health. Do you buy it? You ruin your health, your finances are gone, right? You want to live to 120, your finances better be able to support that. And so that's why Edward Jones really leans in on financial strength, but also promoting healthier futures, because those two things come together. That means we have to act on health as well as on wealth. It's the reason that our firm supports the Alzheimer's Association, has raised $47 million in the past several years to defeat Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's wipes away your memories and it wipes away your finances. So that you see how you might look at a company like Edward Jones and say, now why are they involved in Alzheimer's? Well, because this problem of closing this gap of talent, ambition, and opportunity to meet that is involved with health. And so this collective impact, or together we serve to solve these kinds of problems together, is a hallmark of the way that we form our strategy and that we execute as a company.
Are we ready to welcome 3 more amazing women to the stage?
Yes, we are. Absolutely. So we're about to welcome up our 3 panelists. Just before we do that, Jim, I want to thank you for your leadership. When I was introduced to the Danforth Center years ago, something sparked in me. It was part of what we're talking about here. Something sparked in me about these incredible scientists who are working together to solve these big problems about how we feed the world and how we make our environment sustainable. And when I got to know your leadership, and I remember some of the first conversations that you and I had, you have inspired me ever since we've known each other. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the invitation. And frankly, thank you for letting me do this. These are things that I have never said out loud before. I'm a little bit terrified, and I bet you were a little bit terrified when I wouldn't tell you exactly what we were going to do. So.
Well, I am going to... Thank you so much, Penny. You're in charge.
Thank you, Jim. Oh, boy. Jim, thank you. If I can welcome our 3 panelists to the stage. Meredith, welcome. Great to see you.
Thank you, Penny.
Allison, Christine, wonderful to see you. Okay, so I set this up a little bit, right? And as I just said, I was a little terrified to say some of these things out loud. And you heard me stammering a little bit about them. I've come to see this as an opportunity in our world to solve problems in innovative ways. I'm inspired when I hear people doing that. And when these three came together, and we don't have time to talk too much tonight about how this panel came together, but it was sort of organic. And when we started talking about the domains that we're operating in, the problems we fell in love with, and how we're trying to solve them, everything started clicking. And we started rallying around these ideas that we wanted to share with you. And so I've shared an example in my world, and we're going to have Meredith and Allison and Christine do the same. So as we get started, let me introduce them. So to my right is Meredith Malone, curator at the Mildred Lane Kemper Art Museum at Washington University, right here in St. Louis. Meredith is a specialist in post-war and global contemporary art, and she's got an upcoming project. It opens February 2025 at the Kemper, called Seeds, Containers of a World to Come. That exhibition is going to feature work by 10 artists. Their research-based practices are defined by sustained inquiry into plant-human-land relations. Welcome, Meredith. Thanks for being here. So next, to the far left, is Christine Corday. Christine is a multidisciplinary and nationally awarded artist known for monumental concepts and installations. She works on a huge scale, and that scale is informed by her astrophysics internship at NASA, as well as classical training in piano. In addition to ongoing solo museum exhibitions and global civic collections, Christine initiated Foundation Civilization in 2001. It brings together various fields into a single practice. So think about bringing unique tools, discoveries, and solutions to address the urgent challenges of our society. And then finally, here in the middle, Allison Miller. Allison is a Danforth Center principal investigator, professor of biology at St. Louis University, and the director of the National Science Foundation funded New Roots for Restoration Biology Integration Institute. Allison says she is obsessed with plants, and her research program focuses on biology, variation, diversity, and evolution in contemporary and emerging perennial crops and their wild relatives. She was a recently featured speaker at TEDx St. Louis, The Brave and the Brilliant. Welcome, y'all. So glad to be together. Thank you for coming. So one of the things that clicked for us as we've been preparing for this, as we've gotten to know each other, is we sort of were, that uniting thread was that this is about human beings flourishing and helping people thrive in a healthier world. So I'd like for each of you to share your why. What is the problem you fell in love with, and why did you fall in love with it? So Meredith, we're going to start here.
Well, first, just let me say thank you to you, Penny, for bringing us together. This is really such an incredibly inspiring group of women, and I feel really lucky to be a part of it tonight. So as a curator at a university museum at a major research institution here in St. Louis, frankly, I get to fall in love with lots of different problems, really depending on the kind of project that I'm working with on an every given moment, which is really one of the perks of the job. I thought I would just say a word about what I do as a curator, just to make sure maybe some of you all aren't completely sure of what that is. So I often work predominantly with contemporary artists in my role at the Kemper. And a huge part of that job is to really help to facilitate the ideas and the concepts of artists that I'm working with, but also to interpret the work that they're producing. And a lot of contemporary art is focused on, or is about, the kind of reflecting and mediating the world in which we live in. Creating experiences that are, encourage creativity, they encourage inquiry, they encourage confusion sometimes, quite honestly, but also encourage, robust conversations. And so I say all that to get to what I'm focused on right now. The problem that I'm thinking about is really around this exhibition that you mentioned that will open in February, which is titled Seeds, Containers of a World to Come. And this exhibition really is trying to consider the role that contemporary art plays in relationship to the natural environment. Thinking about, hopefully, the show will inspire people to really think critically about human entanglement with the natural world and how we can keep, a thriving, living world. And so when I thought about this project, some of the big questions that I'm thinking about are, well, at first, and I've been working on it for about 2 years now, like what would it mean to bring together a group of artists from places all over the world? So there's 10 artists in the show from different parts of the globe with different cultural contexts, who are all fundamentally thinking about the seed as the key kernel around issues of fragility, preservation, and possibility. What kind of dialogue, what kind of conversations can be sparked by putting these works together? What kind of visitor experience can we produce? What does it mean to have this kind of embodied experience as visitors move through? Well, you can see some examples here of these very sculptural kinds of works and the issues that they put forward. And also really a key part of this too is like, what does it mean to do a show like this, to bring up these issues here in St. Louis? So I'm very consciously thinking both on a global scale, but on a local scale. How does this work? Again, at a university museum, we get to think deeply about these problems. How does this show and the works that we're bringing together relate to the kind of work, the kind of scholarship that other faculty members are doing on WashU's campus? How does it relate to what the students are studying? But also importantly, how does it relate to these kinds of amazing partners, including where we are tonight, here in the St. Louis region? Yeah. So,
this is the picture of that integration,
right.
Isn't it? Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. All right, Christine, let's come to you. What problem are you falling in love with and why?
So thank you again, Penny, for being here and inviting us to be part of this panel. It's incredible. And Meredith, your work is incredibly pioneering. And I hope the audience understands how dramatic of an incredible insight that you have to have a show like that here. So thank you for that. I'm a materials-based artist, and so for me, it's not just about the outcome of a painting or a sculpture, but from a material perspective, what I fall in love with is if I'm starting to make paint, how do I make that pigment? What is pigment made of, which is elements, but what are elements made of? Where is that material made? And, you end up in astrophysics. So that's a deep falling in love. But for me, it's all connected because it's this material narrative. When you follow the material takes you there. And then reverse. All the materials that are here on Earth were made and forged from stellar furnaces. Every single element on the periodic table of elements came from the life and supernova explosive deaths of stars. So when I'm falling in love with the material, what's interesting is that when we're tackling some of the most urgent needs on the planet, and there are many, whether it comes into agriculture, whether it comes into how we're using materials, water, energy, these basic crises that are happening everywhere. For me, I actually see a deep connection. On Earth is a closed system. The amount of atoms of carbon we have here is fixed. The amount of nitrogen is fixed. The amount of oxygen is fixed. But what's the good news here is that a closed system is a shared system, and we already have an example of a very successful billion-year system of a shared material, and that's Earth. And so for me, by falling in love with the material Getting into how the material connects us, I see pathways of how disciplines, outwardly so divergent. Think about astrophysics and art and plant science and financial services. How do these all come together? They do naturally because we all share the same material. This is a closed system. Every single discipline in this room, every single tool, everything that you're doing, we're all sharing the same material. So this material, this atomic clay that we all share, this medium that we all work with, it's even beyond a material for me. And this is how much I've fallen in love with it, is that when you really, truly understand the material, it's actually an access to all other disciplines. And this is how we can come together and work together to solve incredible challenges.
Love it. Love the material. And Allison loves plants. So Allison, what is the problem you've fallen in love with and why?
Well, Penny, thanks for the question. And I want to start by saying how much of my own work and interests I hear reflected in what Meredith, what you're saying, and Christine, what you said, and Penny, what you said earlier, just to underscore the point that there's so many commonalities in the process and the way that we're loving what we do. So the problem that I've fallen in love with, and some of you may be aware of this since if you've been to the Danforth Center before, is how we are going to feed a growing population in a changing climate in a sustainable way. I'm in love with this problem because I think we can solve it. And I think, not unlike what you were describing, I think we have the tools and we have the knowledge and frankly the will increasingly to do it. But this is not the original thing I fell in love with. There are two things I fell in love with and one thing that I did not fall in love with that moved me into this direction. So first, you mentioned it, it's plants. To me, plants are really the lifeblood of this planet in that they are, of course, producing oxygen. They're incredibly diverse. And when I was a kid growing up in the Chicago area, my time was spent in these little patches of prairies that surrounded the suburbs of Chicago and also in northern Wisconsin primarily. And I just came to love what it meant for plants to live. And they are all alive. That's worth noting. The second thing I fell in love with was the process of science. Science for me is a worldview. It's an approach to everything that I am doing, not just in my day-to-day job here at the Danforth Center and at St. Louis University, but just in how I go through my day. So what is science about? It's about observing. It's about wondering. It's about curiosity. And it's about putting those pieces together, like both of you guys are doing in your own work. How we come to understand the natural world, how we come to understand things like how we grow our food, how we understand the impact that growing that food has on our planet, and the changes that we might consider making to lessen those impacts and maybe even add some positive impacts. So science and plants. So I just had to say, the thing that I did not fall in love with is I was the kid in biology that just couldn't do the dissections. And I still cannot look at blood. And so although I loved biology and I loved science, I knew very early on that was not going to be a path for me. But I think that's an important part of the process too. It's not just learning what you love, but it's also learning what you don't, and then that kind of, sends you back in the right direction.
Awesome. One of the things that clicked for us as we were talking is that this thesis that solving problems, there's innovation in how we should be solving problems that perhaps comes from integration, looking across dimensions and domains and materials. So Allison, you just said you fell in love with the process of science, that there's a process that you have come to understand is really important to problem solving. So let's start with you. What have you learned about the process of problem solving?
It's hard. The process of problem solving is flat out hard pretty much every day. But I think that it's the perseverance and it's the commitment and it's that I never really thought about falling in love with my thing that I'm doing, but it really makes sense, and you have to have that to stick with it, because I think really every single day, and I suspect most people can resonate with this, there is something that doesn't go quite right, or that's unexpected, or that is irritating, or whatever it might be. And always, for me, I've learned, and I'm still learning, to center that love, that focus, and that is the way around every obstacle that comes up every day. So that it's still a process for me, but it's one that I hope I'm getting better at as time goes by.
Yeah. Christine, what about you? How are you thinking about the process of problem solving, and perhaps that it's breaking patterns in the way that we used to solve problems?
I think it comes with, for me, I definitely have had to let go of any sense that my practice is going to end in making something that you all will see as necessarily an artwork, as a painting or a sculpture in this way. But what I'm looking to do is creating a collective public work that has a contribution that I call an artwork. And what that does is that allows disciplines that have never been in conversation before to come in. Like every single discipline has a certain amount of open foundational freedom at the very start of an idea, like in science. And then your discipline has to refine that abstract through your field into a reality. For me, where I find that art has specific leadership is when bringing disciplines that have never been in conversation together, to have it be in that discipline of open foundational freedom that art has through every phase. It allows disciplines to feel a little bit more comfortable to start talking about things in ways that they wouldn't if they were only talking to a colleague or only talking to their own discipline. So I have found that this has brought incredible innovative ideas, absolutely unimaginable, unknown discoveries that not only allow this public work to evolve and to progress, but does bring some productive benefit back to that discipline. So this is just a kind of, the only way I can really describe it is more of being a material composer, you know, and trying to focus on specific problems and to answer them through all fields. And when I mean all fields, I'm not necessarily saying, let's take 10,000 different fields and put them into the same room, at least not at once. So to me, this is a slow evolving process. The disciplines are in part, a part of evolving that process. But this is I'm incredibly in love with doing this. And it is very difficult. And the more difficult it is, the more in love I am. The more in love I am. Yeah.
For both of you, you're describing high integrity because you're not playing small ball. You're looking at big issues and big problems. And I love, Allison, the optimism of, I think we have the tools to solve these things. That's the sense that we should have. One of the things, another thing that both of you have referenced just a little bit that came up in our conversations is this idea needs a host. It needs a host, and it needs a host space. Like it needs a place to have these kinds of conversations that are challenging, where people and dimensions and intersectionality that hadn't been brought together before. Allison even said in one of our conversations that this is a cultural shift in science with scientists. So can we talk for a second about this idea about host space and how we create metaphorically and literally the place where this kind of pattern breaking can happen? Christine, you want to start with that one?
So host space. So I just came yesterday from doing a keynote speech at the United Nations. And it was specifically on actually a very relevant topic here, and it was on carbon. And what was very interesting about the host space there, which is so incredibly generous, every single seat in that auditorium has a mic. And everybody has their ears listening to the languages being translated. And I have to say, I don't know if any of you have ever been in a room in the UN. You got to do it. It's incredible. It's incredible that there is a host space where everybody has a voice. But getting back to about following something that is worth that space, for me, just continues with allowing there to be a space for these ideas to come forward. And so one thing that was interesting about my day at the UN was that we weren't having a conversation, though, like this. So you have 3 different disciplines, or like a 3.5. Like, I'm an artist, kind of. I don't know what to call myself at this point, but you have diverse disciplines: financial services, plant science, perennial evolution, with art curation, institutional art voice, and a material artist, all in conversation about how to seed real change. This is an example of that. So we're not having everybody who's very familiar with one subject all talking to each other, but it is seeding change by having a very diverse group of people in that conversation. So thank you for this pioneering moment.
Thank you for bringing the UN here. So Meredith, when I think about museums, I mean, talk about a host space, right? So can you talk about what that means to you and the work that you're seeding?
Yeah, I think the idea of a museum space itself, as you just said, is in my mind an ideal host space. Part of the mission of the Kemper Art Museum itself is to be a kind of platform for nuanced conversation and for multidisciplinary exchange. And to putting shows together like the Seeds exhibition, quite honestly, I'm really following the lead of the artists that I'm working with themselves. But it also really, like I said, that idea that the show itself can be this space for open dialogue and for open, creative thought. And that's, that partly I'm saying the exhibitions, but it's also part of what we do in terms of our research. And it's also a big part of kind of the public programming that we create around that, to serve the research and the exhibitions. But I should also say, I think, when we were talking originally about the idea of, solving a problem, I was like a little conflicted because I was like, I don't think anybody's coming to the Kemper Art Museum, with the expectation of having some kind of a problem solved, right? I was being overly literal, right? But I do think as this host space, what the museum can do, it really does facilitate that kind of creative thinking, and in a more kind of elevated way, honestly, I really do believe that it can help facilitate, a real critical thinking about our shared humanity, ultimately. So, and I will also say, I think we had one pre-conversation, and I loved how we ultimately came and thought about, the museum as a host space, but that how St. Louis itself becomes this incredible host space. It's such a unique city with an abundance of, of arts of all sorts here. But it's also, sitting here, with this incredible, scientific minds and these incredible institutions that I think, it's a constant source of inspiration for me personally, but also to think about, that the city itself and all the resources here can be that host space as well.
You brought that up in our conversation, and everybody just went, oh my gosh, that's it. I mean, St. Louis right here in the middle at the confluence of these 2 great rivers, and frankly has got issues that if we can solve here in our region through breaking patterns of how problems are fallen in love with and then solved, we can take that show on the road. We can do that all kinds of places. Have that kind of optimism, right? That really thorny problems can be solved. Okay, so Jim, in his last question to me, asked the same I'm going to ask of you. What ways have you inspired other people, other situations to seed these kinds of changes? So Meredith, can I start with you? Yeah.
Sure. Well, I'd be hope that all the exhibitions and the things that I do ultimately, have some kind of an inspirational aspect, right? And I think I keep returning to the idea that these shows might inspire kind of richer, a more meaningful contemplation again of our connections, with one another and with the natural environment. I wanted to anchor. I know I've been talking in broad terms, but I thought it might be interesting to anchor my answer in like one artwork that you saw a little bit earlier that will be in the exhibition too, that I find incredibly inspiring, and I hope that will inspire others as well. There's an artist in the show named Beatriz Cortez. She's originally from El Salvador. She's a sculptor, and she immigrated to the U.S. when she was 18. She lives in Los Angeles, and she creates a work that's called Chilton El Semillero. So this inspiration for the work is really Beatriz's interest and desire to connect with like a deep past. And she does that through this work with indigenous seeds, or seeds that are indigenous to the Americas. But the work also is a huge steel sculpture that looks like this crazy space pod. And it's also inspired by her interest in thinking about the far future and this hope for the future to come. And so the work itself is multiple things. It is a seed bank. There's actually these seeds that she's collected from these plants, again, indigenous to the Americas. It's a living garden. We're going to be trying to grow and care for these seeds during the exhibition. And it also is a space pod that is like intended, to kind of think about, where are these seeds, like the humans of the future, like literally seeding the future, how this might bring instructions or bring, the idea of the seed is this pod of hope ultimately for like connecting us to the past and to the future. And I like to use that as an example because it really has inspired me in my thinking about this exhibition. And a lot of the artworks in the show really do bring thinking about these hard questions and these, the issues that we're all facing right now. But at the same time, they're all shot through with an element of joy, and an element of hope, and for what is to come. And I thought that would be a nice way to anchor it, because that's what I'm inspired by, and what I do hope that the show and the kind of the works that we're bringing together will inspire in others as well.
So that is inspiring. Kristen, what about you?
Can I have a two-parter?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, part one, if I can even remember part two, but part one, when I found out that there were 35 countries that had been spending the last 30 years in building a sun on Earth to realize and demonstrate the power of our sun as a peaceful energy, nuclear fusion for generations to come, I reached out to them to see how art could play a material part. And the reason why I'm bringing this up as an example, and it was part of the slide, is that with 35 countries, there are a lot of decision makers. There is a director of each country, and then there's a director general. And I have to say that it was the most elegant, sincere human conversation. It took 7 years of going through a blueprint of this incredible work that is still under construction in southern France right now, if you want to look it up, ITER, I-T-E-R. And we were looking for a humble and repetitive piece of material that I could forge, that would go through all the same rigorous regulations and be installed unseen within the infrastructure that is holding the large parts of this star. And it was an extraordinary conversation, an extraordinary journey. I ended up making this 2-pound object that there's 40,000 of that were made by other countries, but one was made by art. And it was tested the same, everything was the same, except the material intention, which was that there was an aspect of humanity that was embedded deep inside the heart of the star. And my intention there was totally anonymous, and that it would enter into inventory, and then someone would bring it out of inventory, and it would be part of the thousands that were installed that day, and that was really what I wanted. And they surprised me. The Director General, the person ahead of all 35 countries, found out the day that it left. He left his office, he put on all the equipment, and he installed it by hand. And this just shows how deeply connected we are and ready to advance as a whole. And with that, and I love plants too. When I was saying earlier about how we're a closed system, and a closed system is a shared system, and that every form on Earth, we are rearranging and recycling these atoms over and over again. Sometimes the scales are millions of years, other times they're shorter. But plants have a role. They photosynthesize. That is amazing. What is our role? What, as human beings, is our role in these material cycles and systems? So that, to me, I feel like is an incredible thing to see, ask, and to convene over, is how are we answering that question for ourselves? Because the answer to that question might be exactly how we evolve.
What are we uniquely able to do as human beings? Okay, Allison, you got the last word. What have you done to inspire people to see these kind of changes differently?
Well, I hope that people see my sincere belief in a better future. I really, like I said earlier, believe that we have the tools, and we have different people with lots of different types of skills and talents and perspectives and approaches. And I believe that together we can realize, I think, a healthier planet, and not at a cost of nutrition or good health or general benefits to humanity. I have, I guess, a part two. I also realize that no one person can do this alone. And so increasingly, and Christine, you hit on it, increasingly it's people working together, people bridging all sorts of divides to work towards a whatever it is that you are in love with. So I hope that folks are seeing me doing that, or at least me trying to do that in my work as we try to move things forward, as we try to develop agricultural systems to preserve biodiversity on the planet and to reconcile the needs of humans with the very real limits of this planet. And in the end, I know we can do it.
Right on. Yep. So I said at the beginning that I really hoped that we each would have an experience focusing our mind's eye on a problem that we're in love with, that we deeply want, that we deeply care about, that we're seeking to understand, and that we know the planet and human lives would be better if we solved. So I would leave you with three things then about what I feel like I've heard tonight. First, what is the insatiable desire you have? What is the problem you are deeply in love with? Go with that. There are lots of things that need to be solved. Go with the one that fires your spirit. The second thing, Allison, you just said it, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, or at least let any fearfulness that you feel be an opportunity that drives you. And then the third thing, find a host space and a group of sojourners that will solve the problem together in a new way. Y'all, thank you so much for allowing us to have this conversation. For our panelists, thank you so much. It's been a delight to get ready for this, and I think the conversation is probably going to continue for a long time to come. Thanks y'all so much. Can you help me thank these three? Well done. Lovely being with y'all. Safe travels home. Thank you.
Penny, great job. Thank you.
Good work, everybody.
Thank you.
Are you afraid?